Welcome to the Low Country Revolutionaries, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of Charleston, South Carolina's vibrant entrepreneurial scene. I'm your host, Bill Bellott, founder of Veritas Exoscience, and each week we're spotlighting the boldest innovators from the Chucktown startup community. These are the visionaries pouring their heart and soul into the businesses that are transferring Charleston into a global hub of creativity and American ingenuity. Get ready for raw, real conversations with the trailblazers shaping our city's future. Let's dive in. I would like to welcome Merridith Crowe. Merridith is the owner of the Life and Death Coach. In her professional capacities, life coach or end-of-life coach, her job is to help individuals live all the days of their life as authentically and wholeheartedly as possible. That sounds wonderful, Merridith. Tell me some more about this. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Bill. So happy to be here today.
I'm happy to have you. I have to say, you're the first end-of-life coach I have ever met. So this is kind of special. And I was looking, because you have in your write-up, like, you're a doula. And whenever I've heard the word doula, it's usually around birth. And so
That's right.
I didn't even know there was a end-of-life doula. So how did you even get to this? And what is it?
Yeah, so I have a life and death coaching practice. And when I was preparing for that, or actually just preparing for this phase of life as an entrepreneur, I was really contemplating, what do people come to me for?
Right.
Like, what do they already come to me for? And how can I really do that for a living? And I'm the person that people come to for advice about hard things. That's consistent throughout my entire life. So I knew I was going to pursue life coaching, certainly to help people sort of navigate the trenches, the most difficult parts of life, to help people with real practical advice, real practical behavior change, and really live the lives that they wanted to live. But I also realized that all living involves grief and loss. All change really is involving grief and loss. And so when I was preparing and doing my sabbatical and my continuing education, I decided to get really good at death, because it is the ultimate change. And, we enter this life, we exit this life, and death is our destiny. I mean, it's going to happen to all of us, whether we want to believe it or not. And so for me, it was really about understanding mortality, and helping people prepare for and navigate end of life. And so I think these two parts are sisters. So life and death are sisters. They belong together. And if we're not grieving, we will be. And if we're not living, we should be. And I just wanted to be able to provide a full service coaching practice. So that's how I got into it.
That's really cool. Yeah, I kind of resonate with some of the things you say. And it's like, one of the reasons I got into the business I'm in is like, people always came to me because they wanted to know the truth. Sometimes they were not really, really hoping to get what they got, but they got the truth. Yep. So, I totally get what you're saying there. And that's great that, you're now at a point in your life where you kind of figure it out. It's like, hey, this is kind of me. And this is how I can reach more people by doing it through this entrepreneur kind of way. So right. What kind of play do you work with? Are you working more with, like, I'll say individuals? Are you working through like the hospice system? How do you kind of connect with folks?
Sure. So my volunteerism is in the hospice space. So I always joke, when I'm not getting paid, I'm volunteering as a hospice volunteer. But folks are coming to me all kinds of ways. By and large, it's referral and people that I, smack into on the street or at a networking event who are just dealing with real life issues. I may be encountering someone whose parent is preparing, because they've had a terminal diagnosis. I may be encountering a daughter who is supporting her mother in dementia or whatever the case might be. And I'm also, capable of helping families navigate child death and those sorts of things. So these are things that touch all of our lives. And so I can be at a networking event, like 1 Million Cups here in Charleston, or the Low Country Senior Network event, or a women's networking event. And inevitably, We're all dealing with real life issues.
Right.
And so that's generally how I connect with folks. But in terms of the practice itself, in the life side, it's generally people that are experiencing some kind of loss, or relationship challenge.
Hmm.
Maybe they're supporting a child through a trauma. Maybe they're processing through their own. And then on the end of life or the death side of the work, I'm supporting either individuals who have received a life-limiting diagnosis or a
Okay.
terminal diagnosis,
Right.
or sometimes or I'm supporting their circle of care and their loved ones. So I can support a whole family through
Oh,
this
wow.
process. We could do end of life planning and vigil planning and celebration of life planning and advanced directives planning,
Okay.
in addition to all of the emotional and spiritual support. I'm also serving as a facilitator for difficult conversations among members of families so people
Right.
can get on the same page. It really is very unique and tailored to each family or each person's desires and experience.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to ask kind of a leading question a little bit because
Sure.
from what I can read about what you're doing and everything, most of this is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like you're
Sure.
doing a lot of counseling type support, so mental, physical kind of support, but you're not doing. And tell me if I'm wrong. You're not doing legal support. You're not doing financial planning support. You're not, but you may be coordinating and talking to people about those types of things too.
Sure.
Is that true?
Almost. You
Okay.
almost have it there, Bill.
Okay.
So I am not a counselor. I am a coach. So I always like to say that to
Okay.
keep everybody out of the trouble. And so what I never do is diagnose. I'm never
Okay.
going to diagnose a mental health condition, but I do coach. And I do serve as somebody who is going to help somebody with your emotional and spiritual understanding and preparation.
Okay.
As far as the legal documents go, I am trained to help with advanced directives.
Oh, good.
So your power of attorney, not the power of attorney, but if you're thinking through your living will,
Yeah.
if you're thinking through who's responsible for dispensation of your remains, who is going to be named as your medical power of attorney.
Right.
Those kinds of documents will be formalized by estate planning attorneys, but I can help you prepare them.
Okay.
And then that becomes part of your trust or your will, as an addendum or as part of the total package.
Right.
So often estate planning attorneys will refer people to me because people may be having difficulty with complex decision making within their office, for
Right.
instance. I can handle that and get into all the mud and the nitty gritty and the what ifs and let's walk this out and what would happen if, with an individual who, isn't going to spend the, however many hundreds of dollars an hour it costs to do so with an attorney. So
Yeah.
I'll get into the emotional complexity, and the familial complexity in a way that a professional would not. And then in
Wow.
terms of referrals, that's true too. I maintain a strong Rolodex of financial planners, of estate planning attorneys, and many other professionals, so that the work that is outside of my scope, I can refer to trusted partners who I feel
Right.
have really good bedside.
That's awesome. Yeah, because that makes a lot of sense. Because yeah, I've been through some of these things. I've been through hospice with family members. I've been through
Sure.
putting together a trust and thinking about the process of me and my spouse passing away, and what do we do with our assets that go to
Yes.
a child of some age, maybe an adult, but I don't know what age. And
Right.
how do you do that the right way? And
That's right.
all of those things. And I can tell you, when you're paying $200, $300 an hour sitting in a lawyer's office, it's hard to think through those things. But you're kind of on the clock
Yep.
right there. And yeah,
That's right.
I didn't even know there were folks like you that could kind of walk through this. And I can imagine,
Yeah.
especially here in the Low Country where you have a lot of families and a lot of big families, and
That's right.
there's more than one person you kind of need to talk to as you go through that. And so
That's right.
do you typically bring like the family together to talk about it? Do you do it individually? How do you kind of go
Yeah.
about this?
Well, it depends on who my client is. I could work with a family member who felt it was important. Let's say they were making some sort of provocative decision that they didn't think their kids were going to agree with. I talk it through whether it's worth it, like why is this important? Let's get the
Right.
understanding of the why and the motivation behind it, and then really come to understand where they anticipate there will be resistance within their
Right.
family, if at all,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
develop a strategy, right? And so I can do that with the dying person. I can do it just their family. Again, it's real custom. It just depends. I mean, sometimes older individuals may have relationship challenges with their children, for instance,
Right.
and their children may not want to talk to them. And maybe it's part of their sort of regrets and unfinished business that they need to like put some things to rest. I can work with that
Oh,
individual to
wow.
see whether it's possible and under what circumstances it would be possible. And if it's not, then I can still record those thoughts and keep them and really keep them should the child ever change their mind.
Yeah.
And if at a very minimum, help them process and work through those emotions to get to a place where they can have a peaceful passing. Just really depends on what the need is. But
Right.
yes, I can be
Right.
in the mix. I can serve as intermediary. I can serve as facilitator. I'm happy to provide whatever is needed. And it really just changes individual by individual. I think the most important thing is that I have an obligation to respect the autonomy of the dying person.
Right.
And yet at the same time, I can help them gain some perspective about the impacts of those choices or potential impacts of those choices on their loved ones, so that they at least are informed in the decision making, so that they can choose the very best thing for themselves, but also the people that they love and care about.
Wow. That's that sounds amazing. I mean, that sounds like something almost anybody would want to do, whether they're
I
they're
certainly want
diagnosed with a
I
terminal
want an end of
illness or
life
not. It's like,
coach. Yes, when I die, I definitely want someone like that, someone like me on their team.
yeah, because the thing is, it's like, hey, maybe I'm in my 90s, let's just say, and it's like I don't know when I'm going to go, but I may go sooner than I think, and
That's right.
I would love to have somebody. It's like, and some people call it the bucket list, but I got a list of these
Yeah.
things I want to get done. And if I go before I'm done with that list, and I could know can hand this off to somebody, and they can do some of these things that we've kind of both agreed
Yeah.
on. I'm not asking you to jump out of a plane for me, but so some
Yeah.
some things
No.
that are unfinished business that will
Yeah.
bring peace of mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also, there are dying individuals that want me to stick around and support their family on the backside, on the flip side, so to speak. And certainly that can be worked out as well to help people that are surviving a death get back to life. So that's, I think of my practice a bit of as an ellipses. If we remember that sign from math,
Yeah,
you might enter in this side, but you might be spitting back out the other side.
yeah.
Having some continuity can also be really helpful for survivors in a grief and loss process.
Absolutely, because whether people know it or not, when something big changes like that, and the happy side of it is a birth usually, and a lot of times people
Yep.
are sad with a death, and I will tell you, a lot of people also, whether they admit it or not, sometimes they're relieved, and so
Oh, 100%.
right, and
Yes.
and and people
And
don't
that's
know
an
how to
okay
deal with
feeling.
that emotion, right?
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes death of a loved one, whether it's a partner, a spouse, or a parent, can really put other parts of your life into focus.
Right,
And so, kind of, I've seen people want to change everything in their life immediately
right.
because they've been putting things off, or they all of a sudden have a sense of mortality, like this life is precious, let's get it in order. I can certainly be helpful in that space to, well, number one, say slow down,
Right.
like ripping or throwing the baby out with the bathwater, or everything in the kitchen sink is something like we could pace ourselves a little bit, but you know, death will bring a lot into perspective. It
Absolutely.
can make you want to live life much more intentionally.
Yes. Yeah. And I've
That's the good part of
seen
it.
I've seen similar things with people. I've dealt with a little bit of death myself, but I've seen similar things with people who have gone through divorces and things like that, where
Yes,
the first thing advisors or attorneys will tell them is like, listen, don't make any major changes for at least a year after this, because you're going to want to, but don't do it.
that's right.
And yeah, that's great. And having somebody like you that's not it's not like, hey, this is not another family member. This is someone here they're only here to help.
Yeah,
That's
totally no judgment.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not bringing any bias to the game. You're not, you're not coming with the baggage and all that other stuff that's built up over, the family's life.
Yes.
So yeah, it's nice. So you provide advice to the families after the passing and before passing.
That's right.
Um,
Yes.
how does that work? Do you have like I'm just kind of geeky. I kind of ask, do you have like a confidential agreement you sign with them, or how do you kind of do this? So you just
Yeah.
say, hey, listen, what you tell me stays with me. I'm not passing around to your sister who may want to know this kind of thing,
Yeah, I mean, I have a code of ethics that I
Okay.
adhere to as a doula. I'm a member of the International End of Life Doula Association. We have responsibilities
Cool.
respective to that. But yes, my agreements make provision for confidentiality. And if I'm working with multiple parties, then I will strike multiple agreements, like within one family system. So,
Right.
and, again, ethics, consent really matters. That
Yep.
should matter in all parts of our lives, business, professional, personal. And so that's a really strong value I have, which is to say, I care about transparency. I care about us being effective, but consent is
Right.
super important and something I value highly and respect in others. So yeah, and I'm looking for the best possible outcome. So I may take a risk every now and again, but I'm going to ask for permission to do so before we ever proceed in that way.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes total sense. So I've done like some regular career coaching, and so that kind of resonates with me. And like, that's one of the things with career coaching. You kind of say similar type things, not quite as serious as yours, but it's like, hey,
sure.
we're going to keep everything confidential. This is not going outside of us unless you're telling me you've committed some sort of heinous crime or you're going to
That's
hurt
right.
yourself. I'm not.
Yeah.
This is not leaving me.
That's right. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I do have that ethic for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool. So have you always been in the Charleston area, or did you move here like the rest of us?
Yeah, well, this is my third stint. I'm a good Air Force brat,
oh,
and so I was here twice in the '80s with Charleston Air Force Base before it became joint.
yeah.
I moved here 13 Junes ago,
Okay.
this is the longest as a military brat. This is the longest I've lived anywhere. So I guess Charleston's home for me, whether it'll claim me or not. And so yeah, I came here back then, and prior to serving as a life and death coach, I was in human service nonprofit
Okay.
management and development for years, working with vulnerable populations, adults and children. And so
Okay.
helping people has always been in my
Yeah.
wheelhouse. Doing it this way is something I'm very excited to be doing at this point in my life.
Right. And you've been talking a little bit about all the things you're doing, and how did you turn this? How'd you turn it into a business? I guess
Yeah.
that how do you go from, okay, people are coming to you anyway, so how do you go from friend or acquaintance, you're just helping them out, to saying, hey, if you really need a little bit more, you can pay me some and I can do all these other things. Or how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, some of it's continuing education. You start
Okay.
understanding, like, again, I mentioned a code of ethics, like what has to be true to be a good practitioner in this space.
Right.
I've always been a learner, so putting myself through coaching programs, I've tasted it. I understand how it unfolds. I understand as a former client, essentially, like what I needed out of these things and what
Right.
worked for me and what didn't. And so a lot of studying, both just researching and really looking at the market to say, all right, how is Charleston behaving? What is my target market? What's my unique value proposition? What makes me different from others? Certainly getting clear on that. But then again, continuing education, becoming a doula, doing mortality workshops. I do have a certificate in internal family systems,
Oh,
which
cool.
helps with trauma. I mean, there's just all these little things you do that help hone. And then, at some point you slap a website up there and you start networking. I mean, uh,
Right.
but it's like it builds slowly, which
Yeah.
is good because you can hone your skills and get really strong muscle memory with a few clients. And then over time it starts building and you become more like I don't know, a ninja or
Yeah.
Swiss Army knife or something along
Right,
those
right,
lines.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
That's awesome. Well, so that kind of leads to the question of, so what advice would you have for other entrepreneurs that are out there in the
Yeah.
Charleston area? They're thinking the same things, like, hey, this is kind of who I am. This is what people have always come to me
Yeah.
for. How do I turn this into a real thing?
Well, I have a career coach who I've had two career coaches over my duration, and one of them has said to me point blank, don't try to do stuff that you're never going to get rated an A on. So,
Fun.
so if there's this one part of your, I don't know, your skill set that's just never, it doesn't matter how much you try, you could put 150% on it, you're still going to get a B plus tops, and no
Right.
one's going to say you're great at it. Then like stop doing that. Find a different application for yourself. The other is to really examine if you really want to be in your sweet spot professionally and just like do something and make money for it, something that you would automatically do for free if you could.
Right.
Just really give consideration to what people come to you for anyway. Beyond that, I think it's important to be, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, and it's not like you're building a business that like the market demands it. Like, we have to have doctors,
Right.
we have to have trash removal and these kinds of things, right? And there may be
Funeral
enough
services.
demand for it. Yeah, there may be enough demand for it that you can move into that space and succeed at it. If it's not that kind of work, then it's really just a question of what makes you the most unique at what you do, and
Right.
how do you build a niche and really reinforce it? And that's something I've been able to do because I'm so familiar with the toughest parts of life and trauma and these sorts of things that I can stand in fire that not all coaches are going to want to stand in.
Right.
And I don't know of another life coach who's also a death coach. And so hopefully that'll be true for a short period of time for me. And so those are my unique propositions. Beyond that, my advice is to really prioritize balance. I've incubated and run startup nonprofits before, and it will burn you out.
Right.
The last thing I will say is find the money to pay the people who have the experience you need so that you cannot burn yourself out.
Right. Right.
It's worth the investment at the front end if you can swing it. Like
Yeah.
if you know you're going to take a loss the first year or two, then just make your peace with it
Yeah.
because it will help you in the end if at all possible.
Right.
And so I've surrounded myself with some pretty smart people who can help me do stuff that, yes, I could figure it out. And in previous lives, I would have figured it out and it would take me too long. And it's burning up valuable energy that I can put on serving the people who need me most.
Yeah, and that's great advice. It's like, I totally feel that. It's like I feel like I'm sort of on that edge of like maybe I need to pull someone else into my business too to kind of let me do what I do best versus trying to do everything. So I totally
Yeah.
feel you on that.
I guess I should say one more thing, given I'm a darn coach, which is to say, I do believe people should have coaches. If it's
Right.
not a coach, it's a therapist. And the one thing I will say is you should never trust a coach or therapist that does not have a coach or therapist. so,
Yeah. That's
so,
probably that's really true.
and I think for solopreneurs in particular, if you don't have a coach or a therapist, you need a mentor because you really do need accountability partners. It can be an echo chamber
Yeah.
when you're leading your own charge and you don't have colleagues anymore or a boss, or you have to find people who can gently and supportively call you out,
Oh yeah.
and encourage you and help you regain some perspective when you feel like it's taken longer than it should, or
Oh yeah.
whatever the case is.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely that. I'm sure everybody out there is like, "Oh, this is taking a lot longer, costing a lot more than I ever thought it
Yeah,
would," right?
exactly. Yes, 100%.
Well, this has been wonderful, Meredith. I totally would love to have you on again. I
Yeah.
would love to dig into like some of the things that you brought up, especially like how do I don't want to ask you because we might dig into it now, but I'd love to find out. It's like how do you deal with all the stuff you hear? You know,
Oh, yeah, we could
yeah,
talk about that
yeah, that.
because, we all have friends who tell us everything,
Oh
and we
yeah,
all have family members who have encountering problems that are overwhelming to the system. So yeah, I'm happy to talk to you about tips and tricks.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day.
All right, you too. Thanks so much, Bill.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Low Country Revolutionaries. Thanks for joining us as we celebrate the fearless entrepreneurs making wave in Charleston's Chucktown Startups community. I'm Bill Bellot, and it's been an honor to share these inspiring stories with you. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs a spark of low country innovation. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.